the United States of America begging Mali to negotiate with them on how they are going to relate. Remember, the US had even banned traveling Mali among the countries that were listed where people cannot just go to the United States anyhow. Hey there, and welcome to Geopolitics 411. Now, this weekend was very interesting because we have seen the United States of America begging Mali to negotiate with them on how they are going to relate. Remember, the US had even banned traveling Mali among the countries that were listed where people cannot just go to the United States anyhow, simply because they are governed by a junta who took power some times back. And the US, being the US, believes that, democracy dictates that you do an election, elect a president, and, have a civilian president. But Mali is ruled by a junta. And so now I think the US has seen this country, which leads in, I think Mali is now number 4 in Africa in terms of gold. It's best to have a better relationship with them instead of, segregating them as people who are ruled by juntas. So the U.S. Department's Bureau of African Affairs has announced that a senior official by the name Nick Checker will be traveling to Bamako to engage with Malian authorities on their sovereignty and relationship. I like it. When Africa takes a stance on something and the U.S. tries to beat those African nations, then they decide, these ones, it's taken 3 years and they're not bending their rules. I love it for Mali. This is respect. This is a country knowing who they are and governing themselves as people who understand what it is to be sovereign and to be independent. So congratulations to Mali on that. So the visit, according to a post shared online by the Bureau of African Affairs, states that Nick was coming officially to convey, hear this and hear me right, respect for Mali's sovereignty and a desire to reset the bilateral relationship. So the U.S. is just being explicit in acknowledging that there have been a past of policy missteps, meaning they know they have pushed the bar quite a bit or too much in trying to get Mali in order. So now the U.S. feels that these policy missteps, they want to move beyond, they wish to move beyond and find a new relationship. Well done, Mali, well done. I hope other African countries and presidents are reading what it is when you take a stand. Remember, Mali closed all the France military bases that were there, sent the soldiers away and decided to restructure their country to meet the needs of the citizens, and that is what they're working with. So, of course, this marks a major diplomatic shift for the United States, which has been adamant in condemning governments in West Africa that are led by juntas who took power through coups. Of course, these countries are countries like Mali. Mali is not alone. There is Burkina Faso and there is also Niger. And for a long time since the coups happened somewhere in between 2022, from between 2022 and now, the United States has been condemning these nations and calling them out for all the wrong things they have done, being juntas in leadership instead of, having a civilian leader. But the most interesting thing is that these leaders took a stand in what they want for their countries. They're even performing better than most diplomatic nations who have had civilian presidents who are being used by pawns by the West to get, resources from Africa and gain nothing. So for Mali, we are super excited about this. So for quite a while, of course, the U.S. has been on a high horse condemning the shrinking democratic space, abuse of human rights, not that we support abuse of human rights, and realignments with the East that these nations have been taking. Now, what happened? The Sahel nations, these 3 nations were expelled from the African Union, sort of, and ECOWAS, which is the economic bloc in their region. And so what they decided, to form an alliance, which is called the Alliance of Sahel States. So when they united as an alliance, they decided, since they could not trade with countries like the US because of sanctions and all these things that they look at having, a junta in power, what they decided was to look east. And their east has been carrying out trade between China, and these nations, and also Russia. In fact, Russia has even provided security for these nations in terms of support a lot. And analysts say the US is actually, why the US is taking these stances, because they're threatened by the Russian expansion in Africa. Of course, with the exit of France, Russia has been stepping in the gap that was left. So Mali kicking off the France military and closing their bases means Russia was able to step in. And Russia has also had the Wagner group that has been helping the Sahel states in fighting the jihadists and all these insurgencies that have been happening. And the bigger question is actually people are asking, who funds these, jihadists, these insurgencies? What has it, and it's even subject to discussion, that it's usually the West, because when they keep these countries unstable, then they're able to get the resources because they use these insurgents to, get destabilized nations, so they are able to get resources from these countries. So this is one of the things. And just the other day, I think in Niger, there was an attack, and who helped quell? The Niger state was able to stop, but obviously they were not alone. Of course, they were helped by these Russian Wagner group members and other security personnel that are there. So it tells you that it's possible for these nations to experience peace, but the West have decided it's not going to happen. So remember, the US is being led by President Trump, who operates on transactional diplomacy. Purely, that's what Trump is. So I bet Trump has sat down and seen the value that Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger could bring, and he's decided, you know what, end this thing of us being on a high horse. Let's go discuss with these guys and see how we can get the resources they have. So from where I sit and how I look at it, I feel like President Trump will give, or rather the guy who's being sent, Nick, will give an offer that the US has discussed, which is what? The US may present to Mali that they want to offer intelligence in exchange for resources. And for your information, Mali is dominated by gold, which actually accounts for 95% of mining output and over 60% of the total exports from Mali. That is gold. So you can imagine the country that you can see why the US has decided to negotiate with this country. Obviously, they have other resources. They have uranium, they have lithium. I mean, you know about electric vehicles and all these phones and electronic gadgets that we're using. So all these are resources used to manufacture these things, iron ore, and many more. And it's not just Mali. It's the Sahel region. All these countries have that. So the US is looking at it and seeing, the dominance with China in terms of manufacturing, and then China and Russia taking up the gap that was left by France. They are not happy, and so now they have to come and discuss like equals and see how they can benefit from that. So the visit is also having planned, is not just happening to Mali, but there is also planned consultations with Burkina Faso and Niger. Of course, that confirms how far the United States will go for economic interests, because the US will not get to any country or even bother to tell an African country, like, let's come on a table and talk like people, rework on our diplomacy relations, if they're not getting any value from that country. So that tells you how much it goes to meet their interests. They are ready to go and negotiate. And of course, with Trump forcing a new world order to maintain the hegemony that has been the US, we'll have him, in every African nation that has natural resources. He will be there. He will find a way to be there. And it's very interesting to see Mali, but I am super proud of the Mali people having decided, you know what? We're not letting this, you come in anyhow. We're not letting you dominate us. We're not letting you tell us how we're going to run our country. But now they're going to be sitting on the table as equals. And my message would be for the sitting president, we need to be very careful even when we sit on those tables. Do not for a moment agree to sell the soul of Africans because it's the United States, because it's what they do. They come plunder. What have we seen? Trump promised to end the war in Congo, but at what cost? Give me your minerals, I will provide security. So what does that tell you? Who is in charge of that, or of the instability? Questions to think about. So remember, it's very interesting that in December 2025, President Trump had placed Mali, Burkina Faso under full restrictions under what was called Trump's expanded travel ban, which I had talked about. And as a way of reciprocating, Mali was actually the first country to say, what? That's what you're offering to us. We're going to do the same. Burkina Faso, they also imposed a travel ban on US citizens in response. So it was a thing of, show them, if they can give you this, give them this. And so that they're also able to see you are an independent, sovereign country that understands itself. We are an African people. We are at a time where, as Africa, we ought to show the world we understand ourselves. We know what we are fighting for, and we know why. So it's very interesting times we are living in. I can't wait for that meeting to happen, because it will be very interesting to hear what these juntas say about it, and also to see what these other African leaders take from this. So what lessons are we taking from this on a personal level? Personally, I have seen self-respect is very critical, and the US will respect you if you respect yourself enough. Mali is an example. Number 2, do not bow to imperialism simply because it's people who were colonizers back in the day. It's a new season for Africa. We have grown, we have technology, we have young people, we have the knowledge, we have resources, and just understanding what our resources mean to the world, very, very important. So let's not bow to imperialism. It's time for Africa to stand up. That is given. We have seen it. If Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso can do that, why are we not doing it for the rest of us? East Africa, Southern Africa, what are you doing? It's time for us to stand up. Do not sell your soul or the soul of Africa. African Union must wake up and see what is happening. African Union doesn't recognize these leaders as presidents simply because they are juntas. But imagine the US is getting down the high horse to discuss with these people you don't look at as leaders. While in the same Africa, we have leaders who've been elected, but they stole election and took power. So what's the difference? So it's time for African Union to wake up and see what it means to lead and what it means to have good leadership. Share with us in the comments section what you think about Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and all these countries, and the lessons you feel as an African, if you don't belong to any of those countries, that your country should take. I have shared what I feel as a Kenyan. There are lessons we have seen there, very important, especially on self-interest and understanding who you are. Thank you for watching the episode. Catch you on the next one, and remember to subscribe.